Farm for Profit Podcast. Take a listen, have a blast. Farm for Profit Podcast. Learn about farming while having a laugh. Farm for Profit Podcast.
It's been a couple of weeks since we've done an introduction. You got your vocal cords locked up?
Yep.
All right, let's try this one.
Here we go. Today on the Farm for Fun show, we are heading to the Atlantic Ocean, where one of my favorite TikTok follows, and it has nothing to do with farming.
Nothing?
But I think our industries align quite a bit and follow similar challenges. This man started crabbing with an 8-foot dinghy he bought by mowing lawns and now has a TikTok channel that puts the Deadliest Catch series to shame, crabbing with his 30-foot fishing vessel, Southern Girl. He's freshly married, sells his crabs in his spare time direct to consumer, boasts over 1.6 million followers on TikTok. Please welcome Captain Luke McFadden.
Oh, right. Yeah, buddy.
How you guys doing? You nailed that intro, by the way.
Thank you. It's
Is this
been a
our
while.
first captain?
I think.
You think it is?
Do we have to like salute or something like to that? Or like, man, it's like knocking the rust off. I haven't done this for a while. We pre-recorded a bunch of stuff, so we weren't busy during harvest, and man, it's probably been a month or two. It's nice to get back in here. So, Captain Luke, let's get right into it. You are a crabber, but not like the Deadliest Catch, like I said.
That's right.
What do you do out there? You got a 30-foot seems like a pontoon compared to the Deadliest Catch.
Yeah, it is. It's 34 foot, but
34 foot.
that 4 foot counts sometimes.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, and it's a lot different than Deadliest Catch. It's funny because that's like, that's most people's like, the only idea they have of crabbing is Deadliest Catch. So they're like, oh my God, you're a crab boat cat. Like, how is it out there? And I'm like, yeah, it's probably not what you're thinking. It's a lot less cool, I guess, if you compare it to that.
No, man, I like it better than Deadliest Catch. I'm telling you, I love what you do on TikTok. I think I started following you like from the beginning. Tanner, how long have you followed him?
It seems like a long time because my only exposure was Deadliest Catch.
And what I love about it is it's not just catching crabs. Like, there's so much that you do behind the scenes. Like, you're dipping the pots and, will this bait work and all that kind of stuff. It's awesome, man. So let's back up. Where did you even figure out that you wanted to be a crabber? Because I think in my notes, it's not like something that your dad did.
No, I'm first generation.
Yep.
Yeah, so and that's a pretty uncommon thing in the industry. Being a crabber, like right where I'm at too, in Pasadena, is very uncommon as well. There's not many crabbers around. It's a little, I don't know. I mean, all right. So I'll start with like my first kind of memories of like watermen or crab or anything like that. My grandparents had like, these black and white like photo books on their coffee table. They had pictures of guys crabbing and oystering and all that kind of stuff. And I was always just like really into it, like really fascinated by what they were doing. I just thought it was really cool. I don't know. And I tell you what, if I like kind of pick something, I just, can't let it go a lot of times. So, you know what I mean? I just decided like, I want to do that. And, I'm just too dumb to quit. So,
That sounds a lot like farming.
That's what I mean. Like,
I think it is.
well, and the fact that it's normally a family business, and so is farming. There's not very many first generation farmers, and it's a very hard path. You don't have the infrastructure, and where do I sell my crabs, and how do I get a boat, and all that kind of stuff. Like, I imagine it's a big barrier to entry.
Huge.
So, I mean, I mentioned what you did to get your first boat. Like, go through that process. So you knew you wanted to farm, or not farm. You knew you wanted to crab. Mm-hmm. How did you make that happen?
I mean, I think I was 11. I bought my first boat. It was an 8-foot rowboat. I bought it out of the Penny Saver, actually. This was like before I knew how to use Craigslist or anything like that. for $175. But cut people's grass, made money, whatever. Bought that boat. And, I was just always out every day after school. I was wheeling my boat down to the water and out there crabbing and fishing and getting after anything I could, really. And then I think I was 12. I got, one of my parents' friends. He's a crabber. And he let me come out on his boat and see what it was all about and whatever. And, of course, back then I didn't really have any concept of what was going on, but it was really awesome and I loved it. And so then I just kind of worked on his boat, helped him in the summers on and off until I was old enough to buy my get my own boat. I was 18. I bought like the hull of a boat, not like a completed boat.
Right. You can do totally
that. Roached. What is it?
You can do that. You don't have to buy.
Yeah.
You can just buy parts, like you're buying parts.
Was that
for a
like
car.
the equivalent of like going and buying a car at the junkyard kind of deal?
Yeah, pretty much. Like, when you drive by a field and you see a tractor or combine that's like been sitting there for probably like 20 years, and you're like, it probably would work, but it wouldn't make any sense to get it working.
Yep.
Yes.
I'm the guy that was buying the combine that does work, but it doesn't make any sense to make it work. You know what I mean? Yeah. And that's how I started.
But the price was probably right?
Yeah, right, pretty much. And I was just too dumb to know any better, too young and naive to like know any better, honestly. So I was like, oh yeah, it's a boat, it's a crab boat. It's what I always dreamed of having, And it was kind of funny because the first boat I bought was named the Widow, and it was actually at one time owned by the guy that I was working crew for, and then he had sold it to a couple other people and yada yada. But by the time I got to it, it was it was in tough shape. But I grew up like that boat tied up in the creek that I grew up rowing around the rowboat in. You know what I mean? So like I had known that boat, and like 100 times I'd been fishing and rowing up the creek and just pictured myself in that boat out there crabbing, like loving it.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I gotta have it. And man, was that ever a terrible boat? That was we called it the Widowmaker. It was about the worst boat you could ever conceive, I think. But I learned a lot. I don't regret it at all. I got the hull. I put a floor in it. I built a cabin on it, built inside the cabin, got the motor running. I was doing that in the wintertime before my first year of actually crabbing on my own boat. I was working at a granite shop, making countertops through the winter. And then after work, I would go and work on this boat in this guy's yard. And then that spring, I quit the granite job and went crabbing. The guy that I had been working for, CJ, he sold me I think it was 200 crab pots or something. He was like, just pay me back when you have the money. And I remember it took me that entire summer to pay him back. I think it was $800 or something like that.
Wow.
It was a tough start, but it was it was real tough for the first I'd say 4 or 5 years of crabbing. It was really, really just a struggle.
What 4 years was that?
What do you mean?
How long ago was that?
I just wrapped up my 9th year crabbing.
Okay.
I'm 27, so I graduated in 14. So I don't know, maybe I don't remember when the first year I went crabbing was. 15, summer of 15 or something.
Right.
Graduated high school and then went right to crabbing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
I have so many questions.
I know. Where do you start?
Well, it's just like the guy that sold you the crab pots, right? Is kind of like someone here in farming that would say, don't worry about it. I will lend you the money for your seed and fertilizer, and when the season's over, you can pay me back.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of similarities, but I want to know, how did you crab out of an 8-foot dinghy? How did you have a smaller pots? How do you crab out of a rowboat?
Yeah, I wasn't doing it with the gear I use now. I was using little snap traps that I had made at home. It's basically 5 panels of wire with a little frame, right?
Yeah.
And they have a little string on each panel, and then a bottom and a frame around them. And then when you put you strap a little piece of bait to the bottom, and then when they hit the bottom, the little doors fold open. And then when you don't know if there's a crab in there, you just go pick them up real quick, and the door's shut. And you pick them up. So I would do that. I would dip them off of pilings. One of my first probably like my two first kind of like ventures into trying to make money on the water was catching like little bait shrimp, little grass shrimp and stuff. And so I would like row up to these different piers or bulkheads or whatever. I had a whole little loop circuit I would do, and I'd dip all these little shrimp, and then I'd salt them, and then I'd put them in little bags. And there was a yacht club at the end of the street where I grew up, and I'd sell them to the people fishing and stuff
There you go.
down at the yacht club. Of
Oh,
course,
there
I
you
was
go.
12, 11, 12, 13 years old. And then I started catching eels. I got a hold of some eel pots, and I was catching eels and cutting those up and selling those as crab bait and everything.
So you were catching eels because when you said eels, I'm like, what do people do with eels? It's for bait.
Crab bait, yeah.
Ah,
Yeah.
because
So,
crabs just
I
eat
had-
anything that's dead on the surf or on the bottom.
Well, I mean, yes and no. So, like, you know, everybody thinks that, crabs are just scavengers, they'll eat whatever. I mean, that's true to a point. But if, I always say, like, you can go crab or you can go crab and catch crabs. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can
Right.
go crab or you can go crab and make a living. Like,
Yep.
and if you're going to go crab, like, yeah, you could probably use hot dogs and catch crabs or whatever. But,
Yep.
like, if you're going to go crab and make a living, you gotta have the right bait. You gotta, I say you gotta be where they're at, where they want to be, and where they're going to be.
Right.
There's
So
a
that-
lot to it.
Is that a
really,
secret?
to really catch them? What is it?
Is that a secret? Is the fishing grounds, is that a trade secret that you keep, or is that something everybody knows that's going to go out there and you just who can get to that spot first?
No, I mean it's not really a secret. I always say like, the Chesapeake Bay is too small to have any secret spots. You know what I mean? Like, it's. I don't really think it's any kind of secret. I mean, if it is, then I spoiled it by putting it on the internet. But it's not. That's the thing. It's like. It's not a secret.
think
it's
you
just
probably-
stuff you learn by doing
yeah.
it.
I think you probably asked that because if you do watch Deadliest Catch, like that's one of the things, and maybe that's dramatized quite a bit of like, oh, they're over at this place off this
Right.
ridge at this depth, type of deal, and they're really playing off that, and you
Well-
can see them on the monitor, or maybe they shut their GPS off or something, and
Even when we go fishing in Minnesota, there's secret spots.
Yeah.
You get someplace and you don't want to get too close to somebody else that's already fishing that spot.
Right.
It's not like here where Corey has a fence and he knows that he shouldn't combine the corn on the other side of the fence.
right.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, yeah, yes and no. I mean, crabs are always moving. So you might have crabs in one spot, but then the next day you don't have them there anymore. So it's like, yeah, there's certain spots where I like to crab, and I know that, at certain times of the year or certain salinities or water temperatures, or if I'm using certain bait or I'm targeting a certain, size crab or whatever, I know that some spots are better than others, and I'm not telling people on the internet, and I'm
Right.
not calling all my buddies and telling them, hey, I caught, 20 bushel ones up off this bottom, you know what I mean, here on this spot.
All right, so there's no secret spots in Chesapeake Bay. Give us a picture. We actually know about the Chesapeake Bay because it's always in the news for the agriculture side of things. Give us a snapshot of the fishery of the Chesapeake Bay. Like, what you crab? Do other people fish for other things?
Yeah, so there is a couple other things you can do. I mean, right now it's oyster season, so you can catch oysters from I guess it's what is it? October 1st till like April 1st, I think. So it runs like the opposite of crabbing. There's also some eel market. Some guys catch eels. There's some catfish. There's rockfish. Various other fish if you go further south. There's a good bit going on in the bay. The area that I'm at, which is like the upper bay, we consider that the upper Chesapeake Bay, which is basically from the Bay Bridge to the Susquehanna Flats. It's mostly crabbing. There's some fish market where they catch catfish and stuff like that, but it's primarily crabbing.
Okay. And you don't do any of those other things, like you don't get done crabbing and go try to catch oysters or anything like that?
I did. I have before. I have a whole rig for the boat to catch oysters. and I have gone on the pursuit of oysters, but the market is really tough, and they are not worth a lot of money.
Yeah.
And you got to travel a good ways to get them.
What do you mean? You go to the restaurant and you get oysters and it's like $20.
It's so expensive.
Yeah, right, exactly. I mean, if you're paying 20, that means they're paying the guy catching them 5.
Just
you know how it is.
Just like farming.
Just like, and you don't set the price for your own product, which is probably just like farming, I would imagine.
Right.
Yep.
Nope. It's a
You know,
commodity.
exactly. I was going to say it's a commodity. It's a commodity-based
Yep.
fishery.
We
basically.
get a very, very small fraction of, say corn, and that corn goes into like a tortilla chip. That bag might have less than a bushel of corn, obviously, into it. It might have a quarter of a bushel or less. And what's that bag cost? $3-4?
Yep.
I bet we get 5 cents.
Right.
Right.
From that. It's just nuts. But what kind of crabs are you catching?
Blue crabs.
Blue crab. So is that
Yeah.
like a soft shell crab?
No, it's they are soft shell crabs at a certain point in their life cycle. But I do catch some soft shells, but primarily I'm targeting hard shell blue crabs. Calanectus sapidus is the Latin word. It means beautiful swimmer. But yeah, that's the only crab that we really have in the bay that's profitable. There's the edible, really.
Right.
There's really no other crabs.
So
The Chesapeake Bay is a pretty small area.
Right.
You know what I mean? Considering that there's that many fisheries and whatever, it's an estuary. It's not like you're in the ocean where it seems kind of vast and endless. Like the Chesapeake's pretty small, all things considered.
So would you consider is it saltwater?
It's brackish water.
Brackish. So it's kind of like a mix of...
It's a mix of salt and fresh, yep.
Gotcha.
But it's definitely been a lot more salty the past couple of years than it has in a long time.
What controls that?
We just haven't had a ton of rain, really, in the past few years. I think I may be speaking out of line here, but I mean, from what I've observed, the bay is going through a little bit of an ecological change right now. I don't know exactly what it's caused by, but it doesn't get real cold here anymore in the winter. The bay doesn't really freeze up. It froze up a few years ago, kind of on a fluke. That was actually last year when oystering. But I mean, we haven't got snow in 5-6 years. Wow. And the water is like 90. It's almost 100 degrees on the surface in the summertime now, which leads to a lot of issues in terms of algae blooms and stuff like that, so it's kind of shifting the ecology of the bay and the things that live in it, I think.
So normally when you'd think of algae blooms, you'd think of like nitrogen runoff, and Chesapeake Bay is obviously known for leading the world in, those kind of issues. But then you're saying you haven't got rain, so I imagine
hard to run off.
It's probably not running off, so maybe it's something different going on there.
Well, you got to think that the Chesapeake Bay watershed goes all the way to New York.
Right.
So we don't have to have rain locally.
True.
We have to, if any time it rains from New York through Pennsylvania, through, whatever, that's the Chesapeake Bay watershed. And a lot of that runs into the Susquehanna River. It runs down into the Susquehanna Flats at the head of the bay, at the top of the bay. And, we have the Conowingo Dam, which is this huge hydroelectric dam that has just become like one of the number one problems, threats to the ecology of the bay and the health of the bay, among other things. There's also, I'm right by Baltimore City, and there is a huge issue with runoff from the city.
Oh, yeah.
And it's not even necessarily runoff; it's deliberate dumping of raw sewage, where they just, there's so many people living in the area now and in the city that like they don't put any money towards anything like that, any kind of sewage treatment, any kind of anything.
Right.
And so it literally just dumps millions of gallons of raw sewage into the bay when we get a bunch of rain, and it's destroying the bay, and it's right there. I mean, we see it. There's no question as to what it is.
Yep.
It's just like dumping fertilizer, literally just
Right.
dumping fertilizer.
Yeah.
And then we have these algae blooms, and then fish kills and crab it kills everything, and nobody, I don't know, nobody's ever done anything about it. Nobody will even talk about it or
Really?
whatever.
Because
Dude,
they've
Baltimore
raked the
City's so
farmers.
corrupt. It's bad.
They've raked the farmers over the coals over to the point, and I started hearing this like 2008, 9, somewhere in there when I was back in college. And farming over there is a lot different than it is here. But at the end of the day, fertilizer is extremely expensive, right? It's one of our largest inputs as a farmer, and so we are going to naturally do everything we can to make sure that goes into the crop.
Right. We don't want to waste it.
And not off. But it's kind of funny to hear you say that about the municipalities, because we have a similar situation. All of our rivers and estuaries would run into the Mississippi River, which then ultimately goes down, south into the Gulf. And there's a big kill zone down there. But Des Moines, the city of Des Moines, actually sued several counties up in northern Iowa from a river that runs down, the Des Moines River that runs down through there, because of all the nitrogen they were having to clean out. But they would clean it and then dump it right back into the river. And it's like, how are you any better than anybody else?
Somebody was just figured out a way to make money on it.
Right.
Yep.
I mean, it's horrible, but I mean, seriously, nothing, especially around here, I guess, no problems ever get solved unless somebody can look really good by solving it or make a lot of money by solving it. I mean, it's just the system.
Yeah.
Nobody will ever. The Conowingo Dam problem will destroy the Chesapeake Bay unless somebody can figure out how to profit off of solving the problem. And the sewage treatment plant will never get fixed until it upsets the wrong people. Once you start seeing all these issues in neighborhoods where every house on the water is $1 million homes and this and that, and then those people start to complain about it, that's when it'll get solved.
Right.
Yeah.
But for us, for the people that work on the water, our lives literally depend on it. There's not enough of us. They don't care about us enough. They just, and I'm not trying to cry or nothing. I'm just saying, like, it's just the way the stuff works around here, and especially Baltimore City is so like the politics are so totally corrupt and whatever else that the last thing they're worried about is sewage treatment. You know what I mean? Like they don't care. That's the last thing on their to-do list, you know?
What's the I get the sewage part, but we don't have obviously hydroelectric dams around here. What's that doing to the ecosystem?
I don't know how tall the dam is, but I mean, it looks freaking huge. It's probably 100 foot tall.
Yeah.
It is literally full from the bottom to the top with sediment.
Oh.
I mean, it's like hundreds of millions of tons of just sediment, garbage, trash, trees, you name it. And it's so bad and so full that, whenever we get any kind of relatively heavy rainfall, they have to open gates so it doesn't blow the dam apart.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, the hailstorm that just flows down the river and into the bay is it ain't like anything I've ever seen. And, we get it usually once or twice a year where we'll have a bad storm and they got to really cut loose a lot of gates. I'm not kidding you, dude. It's it's 5 foot wide trees, it's tires, you name it. And not to mention just all the sediment, the silt, and then everything that's in the sediment, and it just coats the bottom. And I mean, the whole bay is just coated in this nasty, silty mud. And, that's why oysters can't live. None of the, natural grasses can live because it just all gets choked out. I mean, it's, it really ain't any good. And then it makes the water cloudy and then nothing can grow.
Right.
You know what I mean? Plants need sunlight underwater too.
Yeah.
So, it's a tricky thing where there's a couple like really big ticket items that need to be fixed at the source.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can do all the bandaging you want, or you're going to bandage your way right into into nothingness. It's you know what I mean.
Right.
It's hard to watch some days, but
Yeah, and sediment.
not that I have all the solutions, but I'm
Right.
out there, boots on the ground, and I see it. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
I don't have any. I don't have solutions. That ain't my job. You know what I
Well-
mean? But I can. It's just. People are trying to, like I said, try to throw bandages, spend all this money every year on bandages, basically, when like the issues are right here, and it's like
Right.
they're just. I don't know. I don't have any good solutions for it either. I mean,
Well, that's why I always said.
Well, I didn't even
when
know
that-
it was a problem.
Yeah, when that Des Moines River thing was a deal, I was like, you know what it is? Our soils are so high in organic matter, which is high in nitrogen, and every river curves, and it's not a straight thing, right? Like every time you get too much, it's wearing away at the bank, and black soil is going in, silt, sediment, all that. I mean, unless you straighten the river, it's a natural thing. So maybe they just shouldn't have the dam there, and it should naturally flow through, I guess. I don't know.
well, a lot of it is pollutants. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That have been. It's not necessarily just washing away the bank. Like that's. I understand that. And I feel like if it was just that with no dam, like, it would kind of take care of itself.
Right.
It would sort of find
natural.
its own homeostasis. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But
It's been doing it for millions of years.
right. But there's so
Yeah.
much kind of like, harsh human intervention in a lot of these critical areas that were put in so long ago that, they didn't think about 100 years in the future. You know what I mean? They didn't think about 10 years in the future. They just thought they knew they could put this in and make a lot of money on it,
Right.
which, I get it.
Well, on the surface, a hydroelectric dam to us sounds like, well, we got windmills everywhere. It's like,
Right.
well,
This is
water's
renewable.
flowing, so it's going to make right. So
Yeah, and it was for a long time until literally the entire thing is completely full of garbage and sediment from top to bottom. And now every time they cut it loose, I mean, it's just like,
gross.
it takes the bay, months to recover from 2 days worth of dam flow or whatever.
Yep. Man, that's too bad.
We should.
Yeah, it is.
That's
should
another
create
similarity
like
for agriculture.
Yeah, that's true.
But let's get back to crabbing.
Hold on, we gotta recognize our listeners. And
Oh,
we thank
yeah.
them for their reviews. We got a review that came into us, Luke, from Apple Podcasts. We got a 5-star review. We always tell our listeners, we don't care what you say as long as you leave 5 stars.
Right?
Yeah.
Matt R. said, love the show. Please keep it up. Need more John Deere equipment, please. Not a farmer yet, but I want to be a farmer. Well, maybe after this show, he's going to want to be a crabber.
Yeah.
Doubtful.
Yes.
Never know.
Does John Deere make a crabbing boat?
John Deere makes a lot of, I know a lot of guys that run John Deeres in their boats.
Oh, the motors?
Oh, the motors.
Uh-huh. Oh, yeah. I don't know a ton about John Deeres. I've never had a John Deere. I've always had Caterpillars.
Yeah.
But a lot of guys do have John Deeres. The 300 John Deere motor,
Okay.
I don't know if you're familiar. I don't know the exact model number, to be honest. It's not really my, like I said, I've never had to mess with one.
Yep.
Most of the motors on crab vessels are inboard.
Yeah, most crabbing boats are straight inboards.
Okay.
Yep. So we have big diesels.
Yeah.
Like I run a 3208 Caterpillar, which is a complete dinosaur. I'm
Right.
sure, especially to you guys,
Yeah.
they put them in dump trucks and all that.
Yep.
But a buddy of mine, he's got a John Deere 3116. 300 John Deere. The Cummins series Cummins Q series are really popular now. The 450 Cummins.
Yep.
The 12 valve Cummins. Basically, they made a million different versions of those for marine application.
So you're out there burning diesel.
Yeah. We're out there burning dinosaurs, buddy.
That's shot up here in the last week quite a bit. You're probably a good thing you're done crabbing.
Yeah,
the season.
that diesel, man, that is not cheap. I truck my diesel to the boat because if you buy it on the water, it's like $1 and change more to buy it on on a pier than it is to buy it at the gas station. And
Yeah.
it ain't cheap either.
Right.
Diesel's that's a big expense, obviously.
So when we started
Both of
talking,
us.
you went from a rowboat to the widower or the widowmaker. When did you? Is there more boats between that and the one that you're on now, or
No, just the widow to the Southern Girl.
okay? So the Southern Girl's your boat now. How long have you had her?
Oh, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 years,
Yeah.
all
Why do we name
kind of all
boats?
blur.
Why not?
Why do we know why we name boats?
I don't know why we name boats, but every boat got to have a name, you know.
What would you name
And-
your combine?
Oh, man, probably some expletive right now.
That's what I right exactly. I was gonna say sometimes the names find the boats, you know what I mean, and
Yeah.
they just stick.
Yeah. Oh,
So-
mine's name's X.89. X 8.9 right now.
X 8.9. You're
That's-
not an X9. You're
No,
an X
I'm
8.9.
just shy of an X9 combine.
So
I think Elon Musk has a kid named. That's his kid's name.
Right?
Something crazy like
Yeah.
that.
did you name the boat the Southern Girl, or was it already named
No.
when you got it?
It's kind of funny because it was already named the Southern Girl, and to be completely honest with you, I have no real attachment to the name Southern Girl, and I never even really liked the name Southern Girl. I thought it was kind of funny. Like, I mean, you usually name boats in a feminine, after women or whatever. But I just thought it was like kind of like, it's definitely not what I would have named a boat. But when I got it, I didn't have any extra money to get it relettered or anything, so I just left it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
And so it was just kind of like stuck.
Yeah.
And then the whole online thing, kind of on TikTok, I had an account for a while just to watch videos, and I was like, I don't know what to name this thing. I was just like, just the name of the boat, I guess. FV Fishing Vessel Southern Girl, like whatever, like just to have a name. I didn't even have a profile picture. It was just
Yeah.
to watch videos.
Yep.
And then here we are now, and I'm like, now I can't change it. You know what I mean? Now it's like it's cemented into my life, which is funny. But I always joke around and tell people that it's I named it after my mom. She's South Korean. She's
Okay.
the Southern Girl, but that's
Okay.
just a
There you go.
BS. It's just
Is